Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
We have a lot to thank for with Chief David Roddy of Chattanooga. He is concerned about the fragile states of mind, the fragile egos, if you will, of Chattanoogans who just are not able to deal with the mendicants of our city. That is to say, the beggars, the homeless people, the alms seekers who sometimes are at stoplights and stop signs, say on Access Road near Northmore and along North Park Boulevard here in Hickson. And they are asking for some money. They want sustenance. They allege they have a sign, perhaps a scrawled sign in red paint on some cardboard, or a very thick marker where the letters have been gone over repeatedly to make them stand out for the person behind the wheel appearing past the mirror there at the bedraggled, bearded one with his cap. Maybe a warm day, but he has a cap and he's overdressed in a jacket, and standing next to him or sitting next to him in the grass in a worn spot, his plastic bags of his earthly possessions. And he's asking for money. And here you are. You hope he doesn't tap on your window as he did the car in front. Well, the light turns green and you survive that encounter. You pass by, making your left turn, your indicator clicking in your ears, and you're listening, of course, to Nooga Radio. You have it locked in there at 92.7 FM, 95.3 HD4, and you escaped one more encounter with a beggar. Now, you are a courageous man, and you actually looked him in the face, and you tried to read what he said, and you felt a twinge of concern, momentary concern, there among the other cars parked for momentarily at the red light. And you thought, well, he might come over and talk to me. He might come and ask me a question. He might tap his golden ring on my window, or tap the tip of his ballpoint pen on my window and say, could you give me some money? Can you spare $5? Can you spare $2? You know, often these people who are in bad shape, undercapitalized, of course, ask for $2, right? One is not enough to buy anything, whether it be alcohol or a hamburger. 2 is about right. 2 will cover half of a hamburger. Well, maybe a one burger and part of a fry on the dollar menu. At least it will go that far. And so they are asking for help. And David Roddy, our chief, the bearded one, serving Mayor Andy Burke, the bearded one, now with his new app, is there to protect you from this man. He is there to protect you and make sure that you don't feel any concern, that you don't feel worry. Now, to be specific, David Roddy made his appearance as the chief of police, head of the executive branch's security services, with 500 strong sworn officers before the city council on Tuesday, and perhaps will make another appearance gently lobbying the members of the city council to pass expanded powers to protect the public, to protect you, my listener, the man, perhaps with the fragile sense of identity, who cannot deal with someone who is needing some capitalization, if only for consumables, right? We're not talking about investment here in this poor person's infrastructure or capital investments in which he is to make money, has to have money, right? We're talking here about money sent in the direction of the impoverished, smelly people who live under bridges and in plastic boxes, behind trees, there behind Riley's Liquors here in Hickson. And they need a little bit fungible cash for their consumables, right? It's just consumables. Hopefully not for their pleasures, hopefully not for their detriment. That would be the purchases in the gray market, the free market, if you will, of alcohol or possibly of narcotics. Many of them, of course, have these horrible addictions, these compulsions over which they are not master, and they feed them by begging. Now, the ordinance that David Roddy wants to expand is one that applies to limited touristy areas of the corporation. That would be the aquarium, the leading venue for incoming streams of spendable cash from tourists the Walnut Street Bridge area, Miller Park, Miller Plaza, of course, the Tennessee Aquarium block, according to the ordinance. That would include Ross's Landing and the Tennessee River Park. Another block, the Creative Discovery Museum and the IMAX Theater. Aggressive panhandling is banned there. Now, I won't say that I've seen any warning signs that tell the homeless person, if such a person can read, that there is a ban in this block on aggressive panhandling. Also, the IMAX Theater, and then the block in which Chattanooga African American Museum is located. Now, this is an ordinance, ordinance number 11-352, and it defines panhandling. The definition of panhandling here on the David Tulis Show, as read to you by the stentorian tones of the City Council and its writings, shall not include the act of passively standing or sitting, performing music, or sitting with a sign or other indication that a donation is being sought, but without any vocal request other than a response to an inquiry by another person. So that is panhandling. It does not include that, but it does mean solicitation made in person requesting an immediate donation of money or other things of value for oneself or another person or entity. Purchase an item, and it's also I'll sell you this bottle of Coca-Cola for $4. Okay, that an overpricing of an object that is being peddled for sale. And so there are these prohibited zones, and the ban also in the ordinance does not allow begging before sunrise or after sunset. Again, that is because there is a greater sense of threat of the mark, that is to say, the person being approached, if the encounter occurs in the long shadows of the day ending or nighttime. It is one is more concerned of being attacked by someone in a sudden encounter on the sidewalk after dark. So there is that provision as well. This is David Tulis, and we are live at 92.7 FM and the fabulous HD high definition digital 95.3 FM HD4. That's channel 4. And we argue here on the David Tulis Show for local economy and the free market. So David Roddy wants to expand to the whole city this criminalization of poverty, and that is what we have in the ordinance. There is the reason we want beggars to beg from local people, not from strangers, and that is the party, the category of people, the class, if you will, of Americans who are here in Chattanooga, who are likely to be at these venues, these tourist traps that are the aquarium and the associated grounds around, the IMAX Theater and the Bessie Smith Hall. And there likely we'll find tourists. And we don't want strangers to have to pay for our poor. We want to be able to do it ourselves. And so those areas, that is that we want them to beg from us locally, the local people in local economy. And so that is why the tourist areas are protected from panhandling, because we don't want strangers to have to support our poor. We want to be able to do that ourselves, and we want the poor people to beg from us, right, domestically. We want the poor people, the beggars, the homeless people who have great distress in their lives, spiritual distress, of course, moral distress, often family distress, or having long ago ended family relationships by abusing a charity from an uncle or an aunt or a sister or a nephew, and those bridges burned, and here we have these poor people. And so the ordinance, because it has kind of a stringent protection of visitors, it sort of makes poor people say, well, I can't beg there. I'm not sure exactly what areas are forbidden to me to beg, so I'll stay away from downtown and I'll beg elsewhere. I'll beg on North Point Boulevard here in Hickson. I'll go elsewhere. There I can beg from local people, presumably, and not worry those people with their cameras and their shorts and their new tennis shoes and their gaggle of children behind. And they're here from Seattle. They're here from Hong Kong. They could be Europeans. Occasionally, you see a a Japanese tourist here, having heard about the environmental city promoted worldwide by Dave Crockett. Dave Crockett, our leading statesman, former city council member and a candidate for mayor, humiliated, of course, in the mayoral campaign by the digital swarms that Mayor Burke sent across the internet, where even in the men's room, if you look up Dave Crockett, candidate for mayor, who else but Andy Burke shows up at the top on the search. I mean, that is very classy and very, very classy marketing, digital marketing by the Mayor Burke campaign. So we have tourists from far, far and near, and they are protected by the ordinance. And David Roddy, the bearded David Roddy, wants to protect now local people from beggars, and he wants to further criminalize, if you will, the begging and the petitioning for alms. And the reasoning is well, we're equal, we're equal opportunity enforcers. We don't want just to protect strangers and aliens and visitors. We want to shield from the poor you, my listener, my regular listener here, where you know that the argument is love your neighbor and buy local, where we have a sort of economic nationalism, if you will. I'm making in promoting local economy. I want you to know, I admit it. I regularly, David Tulis admitted that I'm making the same mistake that Donald Trump makes. Only he is a nationalist, and I admitting that this rhetoric makes similar mistakes of a kind of nationalism, but pretending somehow that Chattanooga is its own little nation, right? Its own nation state. That is, of course, the mentioning Dave Crockett, and that is the future of Chattanooga, as Bruce Katz in his very interesting, compelling, and somewhat dreary policy book, The New Localism, argues that we are trending towards independent nation states, independent city states, rather. We have the independent nation state now, and it is much to our chagrin, much to our impoverishment, that we have it with national governments, these religious corporations, pretending to be our fathers and our mothers, and seeking to care for us in every way, and manipulating and effectively destroying, for our benefit, destroying and wrecking the free market in North America and in the United States. We have no free market anymore. We have a controlled economy, the crony capitalist economy, the debt economy, where all truth, really, all value is turned on its head, turned upside down, because we have to have hegemony in Washington. Hegemony simply means control and authority, and that has to stand in Washington no matter what, even if the economy is upside down, even if we are facing a cataclysm in the equities. Even so, we are going to have Washington, we're going to have Donald Trump protect us. And, I'm really trying to be a good nationalist. I'm trying to be a good American. And my confidence is placed in our executive branch, which I need to clip an article I saw over the weekend in the Wall Street Journal by Professor Hamburger of Princeton, where he argues that if I'm remembering correctly now, that we have the national leader is always the problem. Doesn't really matter who it is, no matter how good that man is, even if it had been our greatest statesman in the United States, Ron Paul, there would not be an escape from the centrifugal force, right, that brings all down into the Washingtonian nexus, into the vortex, which is national government and national economy. My name is David Tulis. I sure am glad that you're giving me just a couple minutes of your time here in Chattanooga. We are the Nooga-centric station, Nooga Radio, Nooga-centrism, where somehow we enjoy, if only for a moment, if only for just 5 minutes, the fantasy that Chattanooga is the center of the universe, that Hamilton County somehow is the center of God's plan, that the Lord, as he tarries, will make us and you individually here and our city and our county an important place, a place that is reformable and reforming and subject to that kind of delicate, caring plowing of policy and reform that brings to the front the liberties of the free market, the power of the free market. And I had an argument just recently at Panera Posse, and it was these are homeschool dads who get together every Friday morning at the Panera Bread store in Hickson. And I was making maybe a bit too firmly, as in my very generous and gracious way, David Tulis here, the argument that the marketplace really is not about power. It's not about the word power. It really is something about it, something else. Well, what the question came to me? Well, what about Microsoft? Does it not have power? And I was arguing. I was saying, well, no, Microsoft, it is powerful, and it was accused of being a cartel in antitrust lawsuit several years ago. And because it was forcing people to take its browser, right? When people bought Windows, they had to get the browser, and that was somehow an antitrust action, non-competitive activity by a gigantic corporate behemoth. And I argued, well, that's not really power. You know, that is influence. That is market power, which is not the same thing. Power is what David Roddy wants. Power is the assertion of force with the lockup behind it, right? And that does not exist when we're talking about the marketplace. The marketplace is not about power. And so I'm thinking as I help you and we together explore Chattanooga and the local economy in Chattanooga, the free market in Chattanooga. We're going to explore on the David Tulis Show this wonderful phenomenon, and because it is so rich, and because Chattanooga is a nation, if you will, writ small. All the moral problems, all the legal problems that we have in Washington, all the abuse of law, all the pretended benefit, right? The pretended charity of government agencies, government actors, Congress people, and presidents and regulators. They're all pretending to be charity. We have the same issues there. If they're evil there, if they're evil in Washington, they're evil here, right? And so what we're trying to do is magnify the local on the David Tulis Show, as we do at Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. We magnify the local, we make it large in front of us, like the ordinances. You know, if we have just a minute, I've got some important messages coming up, very important messages for you. But on the other side, you're going to laugh with me as we magnify the great charter of our city. The city charter. You can tell it was written in the 1910s, in the 1930s, in the 1940s. There's some wonderfully archaic language which suggests the way of cities in our country. Municipal corporations. They are police organizations, sort of by definition. And we have in Chattanooga a police department, which is the most important and most impressive organization, with Chief David Roddy, the bearded one, at the charge, at the head of it. And I spent a few minutes this morning just kind of going through the charter again. I had not read it in a few months, and that's what I do for entertainment. David Tulis, as I suggest that you love your neighbor and buy local, I read things like law. Law for me is not boring. Law is always the most interesting thing. And here's why. Because law, whether it be ordinances, charters, statutes, or court rulings, is religion externalized. Law is religion externalized. The writing out of new religions is in law. And so if you want to know if a wider ban on panhandling is moral and right and true and good, as Chief Roddy pragmatically argues before the city council, you can evaluate that in terms of the religious presuppositions. There is a religious claim made by every ordinance, every law is a claim of what is evil, and an equal claim of what is good and true and right. And so David Roddy wants to expand the claim of the statute, the Tennessee statute in Title 39 for panhandling, and that's of course enforceable separately by the sheriff, and it's also enforced by the chief of police. Now this is a question on whether he has authority to do that. I've raised this question, the only journalist in Chattanooga to raise this type of question. What is your authority to enforce any statute apart from explicit grants by the General Assembly? And those grants are explicit in the Tennessee Code. in Title 55, which is the transportation statute. The city has authority to enforce the transportation statute. Does it have authority to enforce Title 39? But anyway, that there's a panhandling ordinance, and that is there kind of in the background of the story on the front pages here in Chattanooga about the ordinance, which the city police department does have authority to enforce. It does have authority to enforce the ordinance. It does have that. There's no doubt about that. It has legal authority in statute, in the code, to enforce the ordinance. Should that enforcement against the poor be what? I suggest maybe that we should be a little tougher. I suggest that we have a more testosterone approach to life living in the city. Cities are, after all, places of excitement. They're places of encounter with new and different types of people. You might meet a homosexual in a city. You might meet a person of color in the city. You might meet a poor person. You might meet a beggar. You might meet an entrepreneur. You might meet a radio salesman with a beard holding a cup with a straw coming from it.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.